What's the scariest thing you found on the deep web? I don't know if it happens to anyone else, but when I get really bored, I start doing stupid things on the internet, the kind you know you shouldn't do, but boredom gets the better of you. This was a few years ago, and for some reason, I decided I wanted to go see what was on the deep web. I didn't do it out of curiosity or because I wanted to feel like a computer expert. I don't know, pure curiosity. I installed what I needed, configured everything more or less as I had read on some forums, and started looking for links. Most of them were broken pages, empty marketplaces, or old-looking sites that were useless. I spent a long time wandering around without seeing anything too interesting. It was interesting, but suddenly I found a link in a semi-abandoned forum. It didn't say much, just the Abyss chat room, with a warning that sounded like a joke. Enter at your own risk, and with zero common sense, I entered the page. It was black. There was only a chat box in the center and a list of connected users on the side. There were no images, icons, or any nice design, just plain text, but the usernames were already weird. There were people connected with names like Simple33, Mother of Flies, Guest 666, Observer, Empty, Empty, Empty. Things like that. I thought it was part of the game, like those creepy pasta wings to scare you. So I typed hello. No one responded at first, but after a few seconds, someone wrote, "You know why you're here?" I wrote, "I'm just exploring, I'm bored." Another user responded. They always say that, and that's when I started to feel something weird, like they weren't talking in general terms, but directly to me. Another user wrote, "What are you willing to give up?" I responded with sarcasm, depending on what I get in return. Ha ha ha. After that, everyone started writing at the same time. They weren't long messages, more like single phrases. But all too personal, things like, "Have you thought about giving up? Right? You lied to your best friend. Last night, you stared at the ceiling at 3:42 in the morning." I'm not going to lie. I was already quite uncomfortable because I don't know if it was paranoia or what, but those phrases weren't generic. Some were very true. I closed the browser. I turned it off. I told myself it was a coincidence, that it was a well-programmed bot or people guessing. But when I turned the computer back on later, the page had opened. Even though I had closed it and there was a new message in the chat, "Running away doesn't change who you are." I turned everything off again. This time, I unplugged the computer. My heart was with me, and the worst part was that night at exactly 3:42, I woke up. Not because of a dream or a noise. I just opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling, exactly as one of the messages said. I never went into that chat again, nor did I go to the deep web. I don't know if it was a coincidence, whether someone was playing with me or whether my head simply betrayed me, but since then, whenever someone tells me that the deep web is just a bunch of scams, I think of that chat and that feeling of being watched without understanding by whom. I never wanted to know if that page still existed. What I experienced there was enough. It was enough if you're enjoying it. Subscribe. I'm not one to get too involved in shady things. I've never been one of those who look for strange pages or strange videos out of curiosity, but there was a time when I was really into forums, reading stories about the deep web. You know, that part of the internet that doesn't appear on Google, where you supposedly find the worst of the worst. And one day, like an idiot, I decided to search for something stupid, my parents' names. I don't know what crossed my mind. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I just wanted to see if there was anything related to them, maybe an old photo or a document. Leaked, I don't know, it was more of a game. I swear I didn't expect to find absolutely anything, but I found something at first. Just nonsensical things appeared, files with strange names, blank pages, but in one of them, a directory with a bunch of untitled videos. I saw a file with a date that caught my attention. It was from about 15 years ago, right around the time my family moved to another city without much explanation. I clicked on it and regretted it the second the video didn't last long. It started with a night recording like a security camera. There was no sound at first. I didn't recognize anything, but then I looked closely. The street in the background, even the facade was the house where we lived before. Where I was born. A car appears. 3 people get out. One of them was my mom. I'm absolutely sure she had the same coat, the same haircut, and even walked the same. The other 2 didn't recognize them. One was wearing a mask. They entered the house. No one is gone. But you can see movement through the windows. Then the camera cuts to another shot, this time from inside. I don't know if it was an installed camera or what. But you can clearly see a room and what happens there. I'm not going to describe it. I'll just say that it's something that left me frozen, not because it was violent or bloody, but because of what it implied. Because it seemed like my mom was participating, as if she knew what she was doing, as if she were part of it. I turned off the video before it ended. I couldn't watch anymore. I closed everything, unplugged the computer, and sat there, not knowing what to do. It was as if everything I thought I knew about my family had just been shaken to bits. I wondered if it was a setup, if it was a mistake, if I was hallucinating. I spent days without being able to sleep properly. Every time I saw my mom, I felt like I was standing in front of a stranger. I was afraid to ask, to look for more, to confirm if it was true, because if it was, everything would change forever. Over time, I tried to forget it, to convince myself that it had been a coincidence, that it wasn't her, but deep down, something inside about me, he knows it was, and every time someone mentions strange things they saw on the deep web, I just stay quiet because it's one thing to see something horrible, but it's quite another to see someone you love being part of that next story. I know a lot of people exaggerate when they talk about the deep web, that yes, rituals, that yes, strange people, that yes, cursed videos. And yes, there are many things that are false or inflated by morbid curiosity, but something happened to me that I still don't know how to fully explain. It's not that it traumatized me forever, but it left me affected for a while. It all started with a simple game. I had read on a forum about a game supposedly hidden on the deep web. They said it didn't have an official name, that it was hard to find, and that some people called it simply the eye game because it had a strange symbol at the beginning, like an eye with a cross in the center. They said they downloaded it out of curiosity and that it was strange and uncomfortable, and that after playing it, strange things started to happen. Many took it as a made-up story, but others swore it was real. I don't know when I decided to look it up, but I dove right in. I browsed for a while looking for broken links until I found a compressed folder. The file was called Look at Me. I looked under a goo. It seemed ridiculous to me, but I downloaded it anyway. I scanned it with an antivirus, paranoid, and everything was fine. Apparently, I unzipped it, and inside there was only an executable and a text file that said, "Don't continue if it's not alone." I thought it was part of the show, a warning to make it more interesting. I ran the game. It had no menu, no loading screen, or anything. It only started the first scene. It was a white, silent hallway, no music, no effects. You walked and nothing happened. Every now and then, doors would appear, but if you tried to open them, you couldn't. I thought it was some kind of poorly made walking simulator. Weird indie projects. After a while, the screen went dark and a message appeared. As far as you can look without blinking, then images started appearing. They weren't gory or disturbing in the typical sense. They were blurry photos, some of people in abandoned places. Others were of faces looking directly at the camera. But the weird thing was that among those images, photos of me started appearing. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but then a screenshot of my desktop appeared. Another one of me sitting in the chair with the monitor on. One that seemed to have been taken from behind my shoulder. I didn't move. I just stood there staring at that, not knowing how to react. I slammed the game shut. I checked the whole house as if someone might be hiding. There was nothing. I went into the game file to see if there was anything else in the system temp folder. I found a new text file that just said, "I know where you are." I deleted everything, files, logs, even formatted the hard drive. I sold that computer. Afterwards, I was scared to use it again for weeks. I had the feeling that someone was watching me. It wasn't normal paranoia, it was that exact feeling you get when you know there's someone behind you, but no one is there. Nothing else ever happened, no messages, calls, or strange noises. But since then, every time someone tells me it's just a game, I can't help but think about that folder and those images that shouldn't have been there. I never knew who did it or how the game worked. Things about me. But if you're ever on the deep web and find something that asks you for permission to look, don't open it. Really, next story. This happened to me a few years ago. When I still had that bad habit of going into places I shouldn't have, I would explore weird things on the internet, not out of malice or pleasure. It was sick. I just found it interesting to see how far the limits of what people shared could go. The deep web knew there were dangerous things and that most of them were scams or pure smoke and mirrors. But there was something that pulled me to keep exploring. Pure curiosity, I guess. One night, I ended up on a forum with a dark background. No name, no menu, no instructions. The only thing there was a message board-like list of posts. I entered one without thinking much about it and came across something I still don't quite understand if it was real or a nightmare. It was a thread titled Private Collections, and inside, users were sharing photos of, let's say, very strange objects. It wasn't like the typical markets where they sell illegal things. This was different. There was a more twisted, more personal vibe, like a collector's club, but for things no one should have, some kind of macabre fetish, with objects linked to tragedies or violent events. I saw photos of bloody clothing and human teeth labeled with names, letters written by missing people, broken dolls with notes stuck on them that said things like, "She cried." There was even an urn here. Or something that seemed to be with a picture of a girl next to it, and the comments were like they were talking about art. A beautiful piece, very well preserved. I want it for my gallery. I'll give you $2 for it. It's authentic. I have a detector to check it. I was paralyzed reading all of that. There were no threats, no screams, or explicit blood, but it felt worse. It was as if everyone there knew what they were doing was wrong, but they didn't care. People were exchanging pieces of human tragedy as if they were trading cards. There was a user who posted every so often with the name Grey Armor, and his posts were among the most popular. He posted photos of objects with descriptions that gave you chills. Once he posted a wooden box locked with a padlock, and the title only said, "It still moves when it's cold." I left the forum without a trace. I never commented, never downloaded anything. I just looked, and that was enough. That night I didn't sleep well, and the next I didn't wonder if anyone had seen me in there, if they knew I'd been snooping around. I started closing all the doors tightly, looking through the windows for no reason. Feeling uncomfortable in my own house, I didn't go back to that forum or look for similar things. Not because what I saw scared me, but because I understood that there are real people out there with real, disturbing tastes who do horrible things without needing to shout it out. They do it quietly in the community as if it were something normal. That's what's most scary, and since then I understood that there are parts of the deep web that aren't meant to be seen by people like me. Not because it's not possible, but because you're not prepared for what you're going to find. Next story. The first time I heard about the deep web was in 10th grade, thanks to a guy in my class, who was pretty weird and into shady stuff. Let's call him Eli. We sat together in English class. We had a new teacher who wasn't very good at controlling the group. So, for the last 20 minutes of each class, she basically let us do whatever we wanted. A bunch of students would gather around his desk to watch him navigate STH Road and other weird sites he found. It wasn't anything like illegal stuff involving minors or anything like that, but it was drug dealing, supposed hitmen, and other things that weren't exactly normal. It gave me a bad feeling. So, I preferred not to look too closely, but I listened to what was going on. And yes, it was shady. At some point, Eli decided to order something from one of those sites. Since we were still in high school, we all lived with our parents. So, he thought about ordering a hallucinogenic substance and sending it to his family cabin. He went up one weekend. He picked up the package and hid it in his closet. He wrote down the address. He arranged the details with the seller and waited. He went up to the cabin the following weekend. We were all anxious to know how things had gone. When he returned, we ran to ask him if it had worked. He said no, that nothing had arrived, and that he was super angry because he had already paid. He complained to the salesman, and the salesman was quite understanding. He told him he would send another, even larger, package. Eli went back to the cabin the following weekend. Nothing. The salesman apologized again and promised to send another one, but that didn't arrive either. He got tired. He assumed he'd been scammed and that the guy was just trying to get money from him. He abandoned the idea of the deep web, and that was it. A few months passed. Eli returned to the cabin with his family for a long weekend, and they organized a dinner with all the neighbors from the cabin complex. While he was socializing, he heard some older men saying they were going to go to the police. He asked them why, and they told him they had been receiving weekly package deliveries. Suspects by mistake, and they were fed up. That's when he realized it. He had written the address incorrectly when placing the order. The seller, who had truly felt guilty, had been sending more and more packages to the wrong place. Eli was so scared of all that he quit. He completely distanced himself from the deep web and is now doing quite well in his life. Honestly, I'm happy for the following story. It didn't happen to me, but to my dad. I don't know if it strictly falls under the deep web, but it was definitely something shady, and it was on the internet. My dad works on something called name generation. Basically, they hire him on a project-by-project basis to pretend to be someone else and call companies with confidential hierarchical structures. Generally, they pay salaries of more than $50,000. To get them to reveal the entire internal structure of the company, I can't say exactly what he tells them. It's part of his professional secret. This is used to steal employees, obtain internal information, or who knows what else. To do it, He needs to do a lot of research on the industries that are usually investment banking, video game development, human resources and insurance companies, and that type of profile. One day, a client, nameless, asked him to find out how a company of mercenary military contractors was organized. Basically, they had worked for the United States in Iraq and Afghanistan during the recent wars. It was an odd request, but we were in the middle of an economic recession, and work was work, so he accepted. And that's when he started getting into some pretty strange places, calls to military stations in Afghanistan to talk to army commanders, really strange websites, and worse. One day, he ended up landing on a page written almost entirely in Arabic. It was a radical site with calls for armed forces and armed convocations. All that searching, mixed with a few accidental clicks on pages with extremist content, ended up leading to something that still gives us chills. Out of nowhere, a message appeared on his screen in plain text that said, "Oh, so this is what you do in your free time." No one else was home. He was sitting alone at his desk when the message appeared. He was obviously terrified. He slammed his laptop shut and called me immediately, because I'm more tech savvy, to ask me what could have happened. I honestly went blank. I never knew how to explain it to him. From that day on, he never accepted any job related to the military-industrial complex.